The Mountain Within. In loving memory of my grandmother, Frances Dorothy Sinclair Sr. She provided me with unconditional love and instilled within me courage and wisdom. Her prayers of hope and all her strength as a woman had a powerful, positive effect on a unique granddaughter like me.
Author's note. This book has been a long time in the works. The idea to write it and share the lessons and experience of my life began at least 10 years ago. That my book is now being published is a tribute to everyone who was and is part of my life. Much of this account is drawn from my memories, especially from my time as a small disabled child, finding her place and her way in a big world full of able-bodied people. While some memories might not be consistent with those of other people, they are my memories, and I share them with you with the best of intention. My family are members of Peguis First Nation, and many of them experienced difficult and challenging times, both before I was born and after. All these elements have played a distinct role in how I tell my story. I have changed some of the names and slightly altered some of the stories, but every word on these pages have been written out of respect for everyone involved and to reflect the times and the challenges we all experienced. Dates were a particular challenge with regard to my schooling, and it was difficult to pinpoint exact dates, years, and grades. For example, I missed a lot of regular school as a result of my surgeries and appointments, and sometimes I was schooled at Shriners Hospital, which is different in many ways from my regular schooling. Also, teachers often moved me ahead a year or two so the grade I was in matched my age as much as possible. To track my path through the education system, I sought assistance from official records, but in many cases they were incomplete. Ultimately, I went with my best recollection of those years, so readers would not otherwise be distracted from the main story. In several cases, terminology and the names of groups and organizations I've used represent the era in which the story takes place. For example, in 1956, when I was born, the word crippled was used to describe people like me. That term officially changed in 1980 to handicap, although people had started to use the term earlier, and then changed again in 1990 to disabled. I have used these words interchangeably depending on the context, the user, and what I remember. Similarly, the word Indian was also used predominantly during my early years, changing to Native in 1970 and to Aboriginal in 1980. I have opted to use the word Indian because that's the name I generally associated with myself at the time. The Society for Crippled Children and Adults of Manitoba, as it was called in 1954, became the Society of Manitobans with Disabilities in April 1985. The former name is used here because this book covers the time period up to 1979. Other than a few references to the full name of the organization for the sake of clarity, I refer to it simply as the Society on the pages. The Manitoba Motor League, or MML, was renamed the Canadian Automobile Association, or CAA, in 1993. Again, because this account does not extend to 1993, I've used the name it was known by back then. I hope you will draw inspiration from my life, my words, my experiences, and my determination to survive and thrive. And when you finish reading this part of my story, I invite you to read part 2 of my life in my second book, which I have already begun to write.
Early days. A new baby, an important decision, and family bonding. The beginning. It is 7:10 a.m. on January 9th, 1956. The air in the delivery room in the Kenora, Ontario hospital is damp and heavy with the sounds of labor. Coached by her mother, Frances, May strains between heavy breathing. Push! Push harder! You can do this! Frances grips May's hand, and soon both women's palms are drenched with sweat. There is one final strained yell. Ow! And the baby's head emerges, coated in a glistening film of fluid. One more push for the shoulders, and then the little body glides out. The doctor gives a life-giving smack to the baby's bottom, and startled cries fill the room. May lies back exhausted, the grimace on her face softening to relief, with the realization that the delivery she had been dreading is finally over. Neither she nor her mother notices the startled look exchanged between Dr. Plaisir and the two nurses, Miss Stickney and Mrs. Love. When the doctor says, "We'll get your baby ready for you right away," Mrs. Love turns her back to the young mother and wraps the newborn tightly and safely in a soft blanket. Miss Stickney's attention is on May, assisting her in getting comfortable. A few minutes later, the swaddled baby is placed on the pillow beside her mother's head. May looks intently at her baby's little face. Then with the tip of her finger she touches the soft, velvety cheek. When she looks up at Frances, her relief is obvious. She lets out a long, deep breath. "I did it, didn't I?" Miss Stickney interrupts their moment and speaks directly to May. "It's 8 a.m. Let's take you to your room, young lady, and I'll get you settled." Mrs. Love picks up the baby, and as she heads for the door, calls back to reassure the young mom. "We'll put your baby in the nursery with all the other babies." More silent looks are exchanged between the doctor and the remaining nurse. Just before Dr. Plaisir slips out of the room, he turns to May's mother. "Mrs. Sinclair, I'd like to speak to you before you leave. Please stop by the nurse's station and someone will show you to my office." At 5 months pregnant herself, Frances keeps pace beside May's gurney as her daughter is wheeled from the delivery room. Only when May is transferred to the hospital bed do the mother and daughter let go of each other's hand. When May is settled and the two of them are finally alone, an exhausted Frances pulls a chair beside her daughter's bed and sits down heavily. Her feet are aching for standing all those long hours during the delivery. Murmuring, "I did it," May falls asleep in seconds. Again taking her daughter's hand, Frances gently opens May's fingers until both hands are flat against each other. May's looks tiny in comparison with hers, but then Frances reflects May is only 14 years old, and that's when the reality of their situation strikes Frances. She and this child of hers are both mothers. As Frances entwines her fingers with May's, a sense of despair overcomes her. She leans down and strokes the face of her sleeping daughter. "I'm so sorry for the harm done to you. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for not protecting you. We should have talked more. I should have done more. But we will work this out. Somehow we'll work it out, May." Before leaving the hospital, Frances stops at the nurse's station. Miss Stickney speaks up. "Mrs. Sinclair, please come with us. We'll take you to the doctor's office." Dr. Plaisir has obviously been waiting for Frances, and he invites her to take a seat. The two nurses stand on either side of her like protective barriers. The doctor begins to speak in a loud, hurried voice. "Mrs. Sinclair, prepare yourself. I have some disturbing news about your granddaughter, and you need to know this before your daughter sees her child again." He hesitates, as if looking for the right words, and then continues on with a softer tone. "Your granddaughter was born crippled. She has no hands. Her left arm ends at the elbow, and her right arm ends at the wrist." Frances lets out a loud gasp and puts her hand to her mouth. She stares wide-eyed in disbelief at the doctor's solemn face. The ticking clock on the wall is the only other sound in the room. "And I'm afraid there's more. Normally there are 2 bones between the knee and the ankle, the tibia and the fibula, but the baby has only a tibia in each leg. Also, instead of having average-sized feet with flat, solid soles, hers are abnormally small with rounded soles, and she doesn't have all her toes." Frances closes her eyes and moans. The room has started to spin away from her. The doctor pauses briefly before asking, "Did your daughter take any kind of medication?" Frances isn't able to answer that question and simply shakes her head. She is weeping now,